Well, extra rides again. We are back in your downloads for the best of all reasons, which will be revealed momentarily. But with me in the room is Joshua Hatton. Welcome, Joshua. How do you feel about extra riding again this day?
Fucking awesome.
By the way,
great.
guests, everyone can swear. There's no rules in America anymore, so say whatever you want to say at any given time. So you're a happy boy, Joshua.
It is an absolutely exciting day. We have an exciting subject to talk about and just some wonderful people that we're bringing on. I think we had mothballed extra for a good while, and what a reason to bring it back today.
And speaking of bringing people into this, we're going to go around our panel very quickly here. Anna, can you introduce yourself, please?
Of course. My name is Anna Hins. I'm the Business Development Manager at Westland Distillery.
Nice to see you.
Beauty.
Jared, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, Jared Himstead. I'm the head distiller at Balcones Distilling.
This is such a great group of people that I'm looking at right now. Steve, you're up.
Hi, it's Steve Hawley. Today, I guess, I'm the president of the American Single Malt Whiskey Commission. I'll choose that title from the stack of titles I have on my desk here.
Man, I wish the listeners could have seen you changing hats right before that introduction.
Changing
Colin,
crowns.
welcome. Tell us a bit.
Hey, Jason. My name's Colin Keegan. I'm the founder of Santa Fe Spirits and currently recently transitioned into ambassador for Santa Fe Spirits. Somebody else is in charge. That's enough.
Welcome, Colin. Gareth.
Hey guys, I'm Gareth Moore, and I'm the CEO at Virginia Distillery Company.
Brilliant. Good to have you, Gareth. Justin.
Everybody, my name is Justin Aiden. My title is Head Blender with Stranahan's American Single Malt here in Denver, Colorado.
And last but not least, Thomas.
Hi, everyone. I'm Thomas, founder and CEO of Westward Whiskey.
And you've never sounded better, Thomas. Good to have you here. Welcome, everybody. Today, we are discussing the ratification of American Single Malt Whiskey in America, the country that is America. Steve, I want to begin with you. You're the president of this commission. You have been seen as the figurehead leading this charge. Clearly, you're not alone in this. There's many, many great people behind you. From the day you set out to do this to today, what has this journey looked like?
How long is this podcast supposed to be? I mean,
it's a tight 35.
Yeah,
so
tight 35. I mean,
60.
it was 9 years ago that we started this.
Holy moly.
This grand crusade. We met a small group of us, actually 9 of us, many of which are on the call here now, during a blizzard in Chicago to sit down and basically draft, the definition for American Single Malt. And, we all came together because we recognized that as makers of single malt, it was going to be very difficult to compete in a world where the category didn't actually exist. Encourage the listeners to imagine creating something which no one really understood or knew how to talk about or knew how to title, and put a lot of money, put a lot of time, put a lot of love and energy into it, and then go out into the world and try to sell something nobody had ever heard of before. So we realized that, and it's probably a smart idea for us to get together and see if we can do that. And I think the most important part of that was we saw around us, this is 2016, I think we can all agree that probably Steve McCarthy was the first to make American Single Malt back in the 90s. So we're 20 years later, and the category was kind of picking up steam. And we recognized that this was an inevitable occurrence, and it was better that we as producers be the ones to draft the definition than to have it kind of imposed on us by somebody else. So we set to the task of doing that. We did so. we set aside, I think, 4 hours to do that at a Binny's. So, shout out to Binny's for giving us the space to do it. And thankfully, it was in their bar because it only took us about 30 minutes to actually align on what the definition should be. And we spent the rest of the time catching up and having beers, which is great.
Wow.
So from there...
never works like that, Steve.
Oh, it does. Wow. When you get this many brilliant and good-looking people in a room, things happen quickly.
Regrets that this is audio only.
So from there, really quickly, because I would love to see the stage to all the people that have done a lot of work here. We spread the word that this is what we were doing. We quickly kind of ramped up to about 150 members. We continue to petition and advocate for the category and for the definition of the category with TTB, which is the arm of the federal government that oversees what you can and cannot say on a label of any alcohol in this country. And we also, recognize that once we came together, there was the job of educating the trade and educating consumers and promoting the members' brand. So we do that on a regular basis. And, everybody wants to talk about the definition, which is certainly the topic of the day, because today is the day, finally, after nearly 9 years of pushing for it. But there's still a lot of things to be done, and that's what we do as a group.
So to be clear, December 18 is down as the ratification of the category, but there's a date in January that will be the application. Am I getting that right, Steve? And what's that gonna look like?
Yeah, today, December 18th, is what we will affectionately call Ratification Day from now until the end of days. It's when the rule, what's called the Standard of Identity, is formally adopted in the national regulations. They have set an effective date of January 19th of 2025. That's when it all kind of becomes administrable. Look, nobody's administering anything over the holidays, so let's wait till the 19th to put that into effect. Everybody gets a chance to prepare for it and celebrate over the holidays, and off we go.
Yeah,
fantastic.
So for our listeners, and feel free, anybody who wants to answer this, let's start off with exactly what the definition of American Single Malt is going to be. And maybe I'll pick on someone. Who should I pick on? Who wants to get picked on? Raise your hand. Awesome. Jared, what is the definition?
How did I know it was going to be Jared, even though no one raised their hand?
I was shaking my head.
Who's got the best beard? Jared.
I should have just gone dark all of a sudden. We did spend a lot of time after forming the definition, fielding a lot of questions around some of the details on why with some of the specific bullet points. So yeah, we've been having these conversations for a really, really long time. But, obviously 100% malted barley, distilled at one distillery. We don't have, well, we'll get into what we don't have in there later, I guess. We've got, 160 proof, still proof. We've got 40 minimum bottling. Those are pretty standard American whiskey bookends. What am I not thinking of? 700 liter max size cask, which we added as kind of a nod to EU import regs, kind of looking to the future. Some of us already export and have for a while, but trying to make that as easy as possible, where people don't have to switch up how they make things or what they can sell abroad versus here. Distilled, mash distilled, matured in the U.S. That's it.
And I think with the casks involved and not exceeding 700 liters, you're not putting a stipulation with new charred oak, right? Like bourbon or rye would have, correct?
Yep.
Which I think is key, and kind of like you'd said, the nod to the EU with the size is also a nod to the EU and UK with there being no stipulation on what kind of wood is being used at all. Right?
Yeah, the malt whiskey reg being not 100% and requiring new oak never really fit almost anybody. We've actually joked about it. I don't know how many times that's ever even been used. it's a funny reg. It sits there, that SOI sits there, and nobody uses it. But being able to use new and used casks was pretty crucial to what we wanted to do.
For the layman out there, SOI means standard of identity, which is basically the definition that you have for now American single malt whiskey, but bourbon, wheat whiskey, rye whiskey, straight whiskey, all of these are standards of identity, which have certain stipulations within them.
Or some people say class type is another thing that people will kind of similar idea.
I was curious, just as you were naming those, Jared, and this is again open to anybody. Feel free to raise a hand, bring yourself into the conversation. But there's obviously an echo there of what you all came up with in that 30-minute meeting at the Binny's Bar 9 years ago. But was there anything in the comment period that got added into this definition that that either wasn't expected, or maybe was an oversight, or just something that came from the length of the comment period? Anybody want to jump in on that one?
I think the caramel coloring, no other, flavoring coloring things except caramel. That's the only addition I'm aware of. We had intended to leave it open partially just because there's some pretty natural smoking and steeping, or some other, even barrel stave stuff that people do that might fit into that flavoring category, that we didn't want it to get too muddy. But I think we all feel pretty good about everything except caramel being kind of excluded from this. It kind of puts it almost in the same, a little bit closer to like a straight, feel, I think. And being able to talk about it like that to consumers, I think will be helpful, even though we had left that out initially.
Gotcha.
So to be clear for Scotch fans who are regular listeners, so you're saying American single malt whiskey does not allow the addition of caramel color, where for us in Scotland we unfortunately do allow the addition of caramel color. Am I understanding that correctly, Jared?
You are not, Jason.
Exactly incorrect.
Exactly incorrect.
Once again.
So you are allowed to add caramel color just like in Scotland.
But nothing else, yeah.
But nothing else.
This was an interesting part of the process in that the TTB issues a proposed rule, which they did a couple of years ago now. And then there was a comment period that followed that. Part of the comment period is them posing questions to the world at large for people to weigh in on. One of those questions was, should we allow coloring, flavoring, and blending materials, is the way that it's termed. We had not addressed that in our petition specifically. Like Jared said, we wanted to leave that open. However, when they asked the question, we certainly responded and said we would like all of these things to be prohibited. Just like you see in bourbon. So the standard of identity for bourbon also prohibits these things. We thought that was the right thing to do as a group of single malt producers. Everybody else in the world, whether that be an individual or a company, whether those be people in the U.S. or anywhere around the world, have a right to weigh in, and they did weigh in. You can see that some people, like Scotch Whisky Association, wanted to allow for caramel coloring. That was inevitably in TTB's decision allowed. Any of the other colorings, flavorings, and blending materials are not. The one big difference, which I think we can all hold our heads up high about, is that while we do allow caramel coloring, you are required to put that on your label.
Nice.
Not something that you'll see in Scotland.
Okay.
Very nice.
That's great. Yeah, I like that a lot. I wanted to, if it made sense to do it now, I wanted to switch gears a little bit. And we've been discussing American single malt as a potential category for a good number of years. Jason and I have surely been talking about it on the podcast and in a number of other spots. Mm-hmm. But I think no matter how much you talk about it, I'm not sure the general consumer understands how it affects them and what it means for them as a consumer. And I'd love to hear from a few of you on this. And again, I can pick on you if you want, but feel free to just unmic yourself. The first one to unmic themselves and start talking wins?
This is Colin. I think it's given the consumers easier access. Everybody walks through the liquor aisles and they're looking for, where's that sign that says bourbon? Where's that sign? When you roll it under American whiskeys, there's some delineations that we've got in there that are sort of narrowing down the category. Yeah. And I think it's going to give the consumer an ability to find American single malts easier, if that's what they're looking for. And there's a wide range of what we all do. I mean, my whiskey is definitely on the end as being a smokier whiskey, all the way through to some really softer, different whiskeys. Westward's a pretty soft whiskey. Westland's a good whiskey, I think the Balcones boys pride themselves on, a really bold whiskey, all within that category. Mm-hmm. And when you throw it in with everything else, there's so many people being pretty inventive. I think it's good that they can say, okay, let me get into the American single malt section. I know where it is. I can see it. And also there's a lot of people working in liquor stores. This is going to actually open their eyes and say, oh, I didn't even know about this. Mm-hmm. Not knocking people in liquor stores. We love our vendors, our retailers, but they sometimes need a hand to,
yeah, for sure.
But I think we've all texted one another at some point of being in a liquor store and saying, I've just seen your American single malt whiskey in the bourbon section or over in, the Scotch section. I think we've all got an experience like that. And so being able to point to a designated category can only help us and only help the consumer going forward. Anyone else with thoughts on the consumers and what this means for consumers? Is that Thomas?
I'll jump in. I think one of the most interesting things about this category is the variety of products. Colin was referring to this, but I think more than many other expressions of whiskey, American single malts really have a very distinctive point of view, whether it's based on where they're from or how they're made or who makes them. And so I find that over the last few years, in the absence of a standard of identity, we spent so much of our time with consumers defining the category, and that left so little time for, what is unique about Westward, what is unique about each of the other brands in the category. And look, I mean, the publishing of regs isn't going to lead to instantaneous consumer understanding, but this gives us an opportunity to build a shared understanding of what the category is so that can be crossed off the list. And we can all spend more time talking about how each of us brings something unique to the category. And I think that's exciting for consumers.
Yeah, I like the sound of that a lot.
Yeah, same. So the flip side of that, unless anybody has anything to add to the consumer perspective, the flip side of that is, what does it do for you as a producer? How does it now help you with your own brand, with your own whiskeys? And I'm going to call on someone. Gareth, I haven't heard from Gareth or Justin yet, so maybe we'll start with Gareth first.
Sure. No, I'll hop in. I mean, I think Tom's made a very good point that, now that rather than focusing on the category as a whole, we get to focus on what differentiates us and, trying to establish how, we have very diverse regions, just as they do in Scotland. It'll take generations until, those are in any way formally established. But I think it'll allow us to, within the bounds that have been defined, continue to innovate and, fit into something that is a recognized category that can compete with globally produced brands and, whether that's here on the shelf in the U.S. or it's exports and so on. So I'm really excited for that opportunity to be able to bring ourselves, elevate ourselves to a global stage.
So nobody's going to be friends anymore, and you're all going to be fighting with each other.
Oh, Steve.
Lettuce days are over.
Oh my gosh, everybody's breaking their knives out. Oh my gosh.
That's where Steve thought we were friends all this time. Oh, so cute.
That's what he has to tell himself. Justin, you were patiently waiting to come in.
Yeah, no problem. I look at this as from the lens of a lot of us are craft distillers, right? I think everybody in here considers themselves a craft producer. And this signals another tool or another avenue on the shelf to kind of signal the growing up of the American craft movement. And I think the story of American Single Malt becoming recognized like it is now is indelibly intertwined with the journey American craft whiskey making at large has been on, right? And so it's an opportunity, to no longer just be a craft whiskey or an indie brand or a regional player and, making what you like, but to really start pooling what we do in our story and telling it. And I think, as everybody's mentioned, America is such a large and diverse country in terms of climate and geography and style and things. So it'll be really, really easy now to have a place on the shelf where people can go and kind of start looking for American Single Malt instead of popping around this international single malt section, the craft section, the bourbon section. So that's really what we're hopeful for.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I've got one angle that I want to pick up with my friend Anna here, talking about being friends. You and I were in regular communication during the fall, Anna, where you spent, I think it was 3 months, if not 6 months, tooling around Europe. I know it was 3 weeks, which is an incredible amount of time. And I'm curious, being overseas, talking about an American single malt in the form of Westland, you're doing the trade side of this. You're doing the consumer side of that. What were you hearing internationally, and how does this ratification reflect, or will it improve upon some of those conversations you were having?
Yeah, I do think it will help in the long term in a number of levels. First off, just internally training, like sales teams and then also distributors abroad, because otherwise it doesn't sound like we're a real thing, like American Single Malt. You're like, oh, that's a great little oddity. But saying, no, there's over 250 distilleries that are making American Single Malt, and we have a standard of identity now. It's a real thing. We're here to stay. And we're not taking anything away from existing brands. Some market share would be great. But also, we have, as we've been talking about, a diversity of flavors. And that's something that I think whiskey consumers are hungry for. They, want to have something that's new and different. And we're exploring different flavors in ways that they can't in Scotland or don't because of tradition, et cetera. But I think the challenge that I still have, and hopefully this will help, but anytime we're at festivals, and there's sometimes other American Single Malts there, I'm always grateful when they are, so I can go over, say hi and chat, and then maybe we can join forces to talk about it. But people, but they see American, and they automatically think bourbon.
Yeah.
Of course, which I can't fault them for. Not everybody is exporting yet, and it's a challenge for a number of reasons. But being able to say, no, it is a real thing. It's not an oddity. No, we're not bourbon. I still want to get a sign for my table that says not a bourbon. But having
there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, not that there's anything wrong with that. That's just not what we are. But there's opportunity there to have it seem more legitimate. And then instead of just having to sort of spend 5 minutes explaining before we even get to taste a whiskey, and then talk about what makes our brand different, as Thomas was saying. Yeah.
Well, if I can burrow down on that just for a second, and Jared, I want to bring you back into the conversation here, and apologies if I leave someone else out in the cold, but I am curious about that. I've admitted my own biases in the podcast that I keep gravitating towards single malt producers here in America who are single malt focused. And clearly, we've got friends at Balcones. And clearly, I've been at Balcones. It was lovely in the summer. Hotter than hell. And, I'm curious for you, Jared, at Balcones, how is that storytelling when you are producing bourbon and you are producing American single malt whiskey and rum? How do you frame that for the consumer in a way that doesn't overly confuse matters?
We probably haven't done that successfully. It's probably almost always confusing. But we don't make bourbon anymore. We haven't made bourbon in a couple of years.
I apologize.
So we did for a long time.
Yes, I remember that part.
And part of it's coming full circle. We started out to make single malt and got a little curious and ADD along the way, and a lot of other things grabbed our attention, so we pursued them. But yeah, now we're kind of like funneling back and a little more focused. We're still going to be doing rye and some corn to kind of come alongside the malt. But I mean, in some ways, it's par for being a craft distillery anyway. I mean, I feel like all of us have spent the last 10 to 15 years having to educate and repeat.
Yeah.
And so in some ways, it's more of the same, honestly. I think the recognition that the category will now have, I think liquor stores seeing that section, seeing a sign up, is probably going to do as much help if we can get that into the 2 or 3, 4 like main national chains. That literally is probably going to do more evangelism for the category than we've been doing for the last 9 years.
Yep.
Just seeing it. And then when you say it, someone will be like, oh, I've seen that. Versus now it's, what are you talking about? That sounds made up. Which of course it is made up. But.
Yeah, and that was going to be one of my questions, which is, to Colin's point, because he made this point earlier about, now we can have a category that says American Single Malt on, in your whiskey aisles. How do you go about doing that? How do you go about bringing those main retailers in to actually make a category for you with a sign on it?
Steve can answer that.
Steve.
Yeah, I mean, that comes back to the work of the commission again. A lot of people, everybody wants to start with questions and now, celebrations about a federal classification and a new definition. Everybody wants to start the conversation there. But, for us as a group, we did what we could years ago, and it's just been a waiting game. So for us, it's been about doing exactly that. Jared's right. The number one thing that we can do is get those signs up on store shelves and on bar menus. That will do more for the category than a federal regulation or anything. So that's the job of the commission, is to continue to advocate for that, continue to educate. Sometimes educating just means walking into a store and showing them that they have enough American single malts to justify a section. I've been in a store and said, how come you don't have an American single malt section? And been told, well, we don't have enough American single malts to justify that. And then I'll take them by the arm and walk them around the store, and I'll say, well, you've got 2 over here in other, you've got 1 in bourbon, you've got 4 in craft, and then you happen to have 1 under the Japanese single malts. So you actually have them, you're just not putting them together and putting a sign over it. So that's one step. The next step is make sure that sign's in the right place. People walk into stores looking for styles of whiskey, right? So if we have American single malt next to bourbon, which is on the other side of the wall from Scotch single malts and world single malts and Japanese single malts, we're still doing ourselves a disservice. So we not only need to have that shelf space, but that shelf space needs to be in the right place in the store. So there's just a lot of, advocacy and education. This designation will help us immensely. It'll give us a reason to say it's time for you to do this now. But that we still have to do the work of saying it.
And we'll see. I mean, there was a lot of pretty encouraging, hey, you guys get this done, we're in, and now it's done. So now we get to see between on and off premise chains and bigger accounts. Like, we'll see now. The thing that they said was holding them up from doing it is now handled. So
yeah, we have to remember that space is at a premium. Retailers are overstocked right now and having a difficult time, just like everybody else is, and it is a big ask to have them reconfigure the way their stores are organized.
Sure.
So we have had a lot of people saying, we're not really sure if this is a lasting thing. Is this the next hard seltzer, or is this thing here to stay? And I guess you could forgive them for saying, we're going to wait and see how this plays out. But guess what? It's played out. As of today, it's played out. So I think you'll see a lot of people from a retail standpoint start to get in the game. And going back to your question, Jason, I'm really curious to see, you've got a unique situation on this call in that all 6 distilleries here are dedicated to single malt. That is not the case. Of the 250 or so distilleries I know of personally that make single malt in this country, very, very few of them, maybe double what you have on this call at best, are exclusively dedicated to single malt.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious to see if this new world that we have now as of today encourages people to either start single malt distilleries or jettison their vodka that they might be making, but they don't really want to be making. It should be interesting to see how much more kind of focus goes into the production of single malt.
Colin, you were looking to come into the conversation.
Yeah, I was just going to sort of leapfrog off what Steve was saying. I think it's a perfect time. We're lucky, even though we waited 9 years for it, to come out with a fresh, exciting, positive story. I mean, Steve mentioned it. Everybody's overstocked. And now we're hearing, well, the stores are overstocked, but actually people's liquor cabinets are overstocked. So how on earth do you sell any whiskey, let alone this whiskey? And, it's great to be able to go into liquor stores and say, hey, we did it. Oh, yeah, I remember you from 4 years ago, And it's going to be interesting to have a positive story of a success story, Last one I think we had was federal excise tax reduction back to the federal government. We're slowly inching forward to even more legitimate in the public's eyes. We know how legitimate it is, that what everybody's doing, but it's nice to have a good story for once,
Yeah, gosh, we covered that FET on Extra for a long time as well. That reduction, gosh, that came in at the 11th hour. Steve, were you looking to come back in here?
I was just going to say, we're really banking on the idea that people don't want to be left behind. People don't want to miss the boat, right? If you ask a lot of retailers that are squeezed on space right now, if they would have made more space 8-10 years ago for Japanese single malts, but didn't, they're kicking themselves, right? And we're trying to play off of that FOMO, I guess you would call it, which is, now's the time to be a part of this. Now's the time to show your customers that you're a part of this. Because if you don't, people will lap you. So hopefully they're going to get that message.
All right. Yeah. I've got another question in the chamber, Joshua, but I could probably ask it if you've got a more time-sensitive one to ask.
I don't. I think I have one. I'm debating whether I want to ask it or not. So why don't you ask yours and I'll continue my debate.
Maybe I'm about to ask it for you. So let's see where this goes. So the last episode of One Nation Under Whiskey before today's little special extra, you and I, Joshua, tasted with you, Steve, the Jack Daniels, the Jim Beam, and the Bullet single malts. And clearly we've got people around this forum, this open table here, who have been fighting this fight for a long time and in it together. One of the things we've been talking about on the podcast, one of the things we've been talking about with fellow consumers is, do the big players wading into this hinder or help? And you can be as honest as you wish to be in this round table. But given that we're now talking about Jack Daniels and we are talking about Jim Beam, and to play it safe, Steve, I'm going to put this question to you first, but I would love for other members to jump in on this.
How is that safe? It's not safe for me.
Everybody else feels great, though, Steve.
I at least know how brave you are, whereas other people, I'm giving them space. With ratification, with these bigger names being invoked around something that was pending with the TTB, did that help bring us to today? Would today still have happened without them? Is that an impossible question to answer? I just know for consumers, they've seen these big player names get involved, and now they're hearing about this ratification. Are these two distant constellations coming together here, or will they continue to exist in separate corners of the night sky?
No, I don't think there's any correlation between some of those brands entering the category and what we're celebrating today with the ratification. I've been outspoken for a couple of years now that I believe those bigger brands coming into to the category is a great thing, a good thing for all of us. Taste and preferences are subjective and unique to the person. It's not up to me or anybody else to say that that's good or that's not good. And that's not really the point. The point is shining a light on the fact that there's an opportunity here and there's a groundswell of interest in American single malt whiskey. So it's a good thing that they're joining. And quite frankly, we tend to point those out because they're big names that have come recently. But, you're looking at, a number of distilleries that are on this call that are supported and represented by the biggest spirits companies in the world, from exactly. Diageo to Remy to Proximo. So, everybody's been a player, just maybe not through some of those mass brand names. So with all that said, the answer is no. I mean, today happened because of the work that we've done and because of the, quite frankly, the diligent and thoughtful, efforts put forward by TTB to assess our petition and the comments that came after it. The reason it's happening now is because the gears of democracy, admittedly, move slowly. And it's just taken that much time. Look, there's a lot of interest in this. There was a lot of comments about the proposed rule from 2 years ago. So I understand that it took them some time. It certainly took a lot more time than I wanted it to take and that I thought it should take. But I don't think there's a correlation between the brands that have launched in the 2 years since the proposed rule and the fact that it's being ratified now.
There you go. See, you were right to be brave in answering that question. That's a terrific answer, Steve.
Well, that was a softball question, though. So I was worried it was a harder question.
We could make it harder.
Thank you. I'm
treading
good.
Lightly.
That's what Garrett's for. Ask him the hard question.
There you go.
So in keeping with our tight 35 here at 37, 38 minutes, right? How does time work? I'd like to go around the horn here and just ask you, what are you most excited about moving forward? What does your next 5, your next 10 years look like now that this ratification is here, it's behind us, and we can all move forward? And ladies first, Anna, you're at the top.
Oh, delightful. What are we most excited about with the next 5 to 10 years? I think having this, elephant in the room finally done, and that's great. So looking forward to seeing what that does mean for all of us producers, how we can work together to still be now re-energized, where it doesn't feel like almost a hopeless endeavor any further, but re-energized to continue to educate and promote. Yeah. But then really get to focus on our whiskey, right? We're not having to do this other piece as much. There's still going to be changes and updates and, likely other battles to come. But hopefully it's something that will allow us to really have better communication with our customers. And I'm really interested in hearing what they think about it and what it means for them. And I'm going to call out to your listeners here. Please write in. I don't remember y'all's email address, but write in and tell us what you're excited about, because we want to know, we want to make whiskey that you find delicious, right? That's what this whole thing is about. And we just wanted to make sure that consumers know what they're getting. It's something that fits, and we're not being shady. Everyone's being transparent about it. So I think we're just excited about the continued collaboration and craftsmanship that we can focus on now.
Nice.
Beauty.
Nice.
Cheers.
Yeah. Colin?
Gotta remember the unmute. I just reflect on what Anna said. Yes, basically to all of it, but also it's going to be great to go out. I mean, it's a tough little market out there, a tough big market. Go out with a positive story, feather in our cap, et cetera, but have something positive to talk about. And also, it clears away some of the smoke. I think we're still a long way from single malt Scotch. Oh gosh, hold on. Those 3 words don't always have to go together. You can add American in there as well. I think you're going to see an army of people. If there's 200 craft distilleries, we've all got a couple of people going out there into their smaller liquor stores. For the big ones, it's going to be more of a pitch somehow, probably through our distributors on a large scale. You don't go knock on the door of Total Wine and say, "Can you change all your signage?" It takes a little bit of time. But for your local mom and pop store, it is just going to be like that, which is what I'm going to be doing probably for the next couple of weeks. Well, let's get the holidays out of the way and then go back.
Look at that.
Cheers.
Santa Fe's latest ambassador. Look at that.
Also,
Justin, it's Justin in next.
Yeah, sure. I'm excited. I joined on Stranahan's about a little under 2 years ago. And the reason that I wanted to be a part of this company was they're so impactful in the American whiskey space. One recipe and one recipe only for 20 years.
Wow.
I was just thinking, Colin, we worked together. I was 22 years old. I've been doing this for 15 years already. And Stranahan's, when I really looked at the landscape and being part of a once in a generation situation as a whiskey maker, American Single Malt being ratified is a once in a generation situation for a whiskey maker. And to be able to join Stranahan's at a place that has been doing this and nothing else, mashed, fermented, distilled, aged here. I'm really excited about the proposition of transitioning us, into an age-stated, double-digit age-stated company, right? This is really going to signify, I think, us catching up with international malt, right? We're going to have a 10-year out nationwide, a 12-year out nationwide, a 14-year-old out nationwide, because we've been doing this for so long and have laid down so many barrels, even though we never knew if American Single Malt was going to be recognized as a category. So I'm just super excited in seeing age statements climb up, seeing people understand the geographic differences more and more and really explore. It's nothing but exciting.
See, everyone at this roundtable is brave. Very brave, laying down spirit for all those years. Gosh.
Who next? Thomas?
It's either that, brave, or financially irresponsible.
Why
You can be both, can you?
We were not mutually exclusive. From our perspective, and I'll address some of the comments you all have made. I think that there's a certain feeling of we just reached the finish line, and we're proud of where we've gotten, but really in practice, this was just the end of the beginning, right? And so the success of the category and the success of each of us individually, I think now has a higher probability, but it still comes down to what we do over the next few years. And so I know for us at Westward, we look forward to working with everybody in this conversation, with companies large and small, with the entire category, to build that baseline of understanding of what American Single Malt is. But in parallel, and I think I'm personally more excited about this, I think this is the moment when we can each showcase what makes us unique, and we can create excitement around the fact that American Single Malt produced in every state doesn't mean that every state produces the same thing that now has a definition. It means, I think, more than any other expression of whiskey, like there's a real sense of place in what each of us does. And as someone who loves whiskey, in general, that's what's exciting to me, that I can really appreciate each of the places that a great American Single Malt comes from, and I can appreciate the people behind it, and it's not, the category isn't any one of us, it's the ability to enjoy what each of us does that is so different.
Oh, well said. Well said.
Yeah.
Gareth, and then we'll give Jared the last word since we picked on him early on in the episode.
That's very true.
Yeah, I'm just very excited for the kind of the doors that will be open and the market access that this new definition is going to provide the opportunities for, from the distributor layer, where we're no longer going to be just this niche or novelty category, but something much more than that, to the retail layer that we've talked about extensively on this call, and then ultimately being able to bring it to consumers. Because in this industry, consumers do most of their choosing, not online, not through reviews or magazines, but literally from the store shelves. And so having that greater exposure I think will naturally lead to a greater growth and ability to bring new and innovative products to market. So it's going to take time. I don't think, just as Colin said, that the retailers and distributors will change overnight. But I think as this news rolls out in the coming months and years, we're going to see some very bright days ahead.
Awesome. Well, that's worth drinking to.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And Jared.
Yeah, I think to me, strategically, the signage, whether it's on a menu, whether it's in a store, just like any brand recognition, that's just going to be so huge. I think a lot of the effort and energy we've put out, 10, 15, 20 years, we can now direct into other things because there's just going to be some, oh, I saw that, I've seen that. Oh, my local place just added that to the menu or whatever. So strategically, that sounds really nice, that like some of that work is going to get a little bit easier and the light bulb's going to go off a little bit easier when we're talking about this with people. But personally, I think the idea of now we have something that we can grow and build on, as opposed to the last 9 years have been, we've got this barrier that somehow we've got to like hit our heads up against enough times so we can bust through it. That's just a radically different feeling about what's next. We have this thing holding us back that we have to somehow get free of, versus, all right, that's over. Now we're starting at a baseline, and it's honestly going to be a lot more fun and fulfilling, I think, to get creative and proactive around how do we turn people on to this really cool stuff and spread the word about stuff that we honestly believe matters, as opposed to how do we get these chains off and how do we get protected before somebody else drops a definition that sucks on us. That's all handled. So, I mean, Steve have talked a bunch over the years of like what could happen after. And that sounds way more exciting to sit and strategize about how to spend time and money, how to collaborate going forward than just to get this thing done, So,
Yeah, I like Thomas's use of it's the end of the beginning. Like that's very nicely said. President of the Commission, Steve, we'd be remiss without hearing from you, even though you wanted to hear from everybody else. What does the future hold for the Commission?
I just think it's telling that you've got 6 folks here that are already talking about what's next, and I think that's that's indicative of the type of people that have been involved in making this happen and bringing this to life. It is truly a visionary group of people, and you've got 6 here. You've got 110 members of our commission. You've got another 140 distilleries in this country that are making single malt and beating the drum. I'd be remiss in not mentioning people that have helped us along the way that aren't making single malt, whether that be the Craft Malting Guild, who certainly have a vested interest, sure, but are just big proponents of the cause. The American Craft Spirits Association, of which I think most of you guys are members, has been a big advocate and has literally given us a stage every year to gather and to talk about how we do this. And today is a huge day, and it would not have happened without Discus and their support. And Chris and his team there have just been incredible partners in advocating for us and standing up for us and spreading the word for us. I guess my point here is none of this would have happened without any of those people. And it's really cool. Justin mentioned this isn't an opportunity that most people get in their careers, to start an entirely new category of anything. There hasn't been a new type of whiskey entered into regulations in 52 years. So, I mean, it's just a remarkable thing that has happened today. And I applaud all these guys for looking at what comes next. And I'm going to do that too, but I'm going to do it tomorrow. And today I'm gonna, celebrate what we've accomplished here, because it's a lot, and it is the royal we. I mean, there was so many people involved, including you guys, Jason and Joshua. You guys have been beating this drum for years as well. So
cheers.
I mean, it's just a really cool thing to see happen and to be a part of. So, what's going to come next? A lot. I think you're going to see a lot of people. I think everybody here is going to double down. I think you're going to see, like I mentioned before, people that have dabbled in single malt but are focusing on other things. I think they're going to pile into the American single malt space. I think of the 3,000 distilleries that are in this country or close to it, I think you'll see the 250 that are making single malt. I think you'll see that number double in the next few years. And I certainly think you're going to see a lot more American single malt exported around the world, which will be a really cool thing to see. So, sky's the limit. The one thing that I keep telling everybody is from a whiskey standpoint, from a quality standpoint, this category is absolutely hitting its stride. I do tastings all the time with 6, 8, 10 whiskeys on the table, and they are all excellent across the board. So it's just going to be really exciting to see what kind of flavors come out over the coming 5-10 years. It's going to be really cool.
And to that point, here we are sitting December 18. Our episode that goes out next week on December 25th, we're again calling for the ratification of American single malt whiskey while celebrating Westland and Virginia Distillery Company being in the Whiskey Advocate Top 20 list. And so to be able to go back to celebrating, well-received top quality whiskey and not have to connect it to ratification anymore is huge, absolutely huge. So with all of that said, thank you, Anna, Gareth, Jared, Justin, Thomas, Colin, especially you, Steve, especially you, Joshua. I'm Jason, and we get out of here in the old style by saying, Joshua...
Do we say chin chin? What do we say?
Peace.
Peace.